Of course, when you come, just bring a warm blanket. Her mother texted. Emma stared at the message for a long time. A simple phrase. No emojis. No miss you or anything. But after so many years, at least some contact. She barely remembered the last time she'd been home to their small house in suburban Columbus, Ohio. It seemed to be that day when she'd left with a backpack and a garbage bag, and the door slammed behind her. Back then, on her name was mud in that family, and all because of a lie. But maybe things would be different now. Emma arrived that evening. The house was exactly as she remembered it. Peeling beige siding, a chain link fence, and that stupid smell of cheap vanilla Febreze that her mother obsessively sprayed everywhere to mask the dog smell. Linda opened the door with an overdone smile. Oh, you finally came, Emma thought, as if I'd just stopped by for groceries. Hello. She managed to say, Come in. Come in. Just wipe your feet. We're cleaning up here. Not like you. It wasn't the travel that was difficult, or the reluctance to help with the bag. Her mother turned and went inside. Emma closed the door behind her as usual and followed. The house was exactly the same. On the left, the stairs to the second floor, where Jessica and her husband Mike lived now. Emma had heard through family gossip that they lived rent-free without any strings attached. Their loud laughter coming from above was a reminder that her sister's status in this family was quite different. Her mother led Emma down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the pantry, past the old washer and dryer. She stopped at the back door. Here, sweetie, you'll be fine here, she said proudly, as if showing off a hotel suite. Emma peered inside. It was a former storage room. On the floor was a rolled-up sleeping bag, an old pillow, and a rug that Max the dog had long since claimed. Are you serious? Emma couldn't help but be surprised. Of course, you have your own space. Max doesn't bite. At that moment, her father, Robert, appeared in the doorway, a coffee mug in hand. Just don't forget the $5 a night family rate. Do you seriously expect me to pay to sleep on the floor? Emma asked. We all contribute to the household. He shrugged. We have fair rules. Fair, her head rang. Jessica and her husband occupy the entire upstairs, living like they're in a hotel, paying nothing. Emma, meanwhile, and gets the walk-through storage closet next to the dog, and has to pay for it. A clatter of feet on the stairs. Jessica appears, as always, with a playful smile, and wearing a new athletic wear set that probably cost half of Emma's monthly salary. She looked at her sister and laughed heartily. Really, you put her in with the dog. This setup is just perfect. She'll have her own space. Mom replied defensively. Max loves company. Dad added. Jessica perched theatrically on the banister. Remember how you used to play veterinarian as a kid? Now you're back to practicing with your patient in the same room. Emma didn't answer. She just pulled out her iPhone, opened her photos, and showed Jessica the screen. Remember this, she said calmly. Jessica glanced at the phone and her face immediately changed. The playful smile vanished. Her expression shifted from mocking to confused, then to frightened. What? Where did you get this? She squeezed out. You know exactly what it is. Emma was looking straight at her. You're crazy. Jessica whispered. Jessica, what is she showing you? Mike frowned, appearing behind her. It's nothing. She's just trying to stir up trouble. Jessica stepped back, as if the phone might burn her. She just wants to cause drama. Jessica, let me see, her mother demanded. No. Jessica barked. What did you show her? Her father intervened more forcefully. But Emma remained silent. She had no intention of explaining yet. Jessica. Emma said quietly, but clearly. Do you want to tell them? Or should I? Her sister flinched as if she'd been struck. A tense silence fell over the room. Evan Max fell silent, dropping his toy. This was only the beginning. They didn't know I'd spent 2 years gathering evidence. Words are nothing in a house where you've forever remained the one who stole. It all started in June 2019. I had just graduated high school and returned from a camping trip to Hocking Hills State Park in southern Ohio, a 3-day adventure I'd been saving for since sophomore year. I worked part-time at the local grocery store. Gave up buying new clothes. I didn't go to movies with friends. And saved every dollar. It wasn't expensive, just $200 for campsite fees. Gas for my friend's car. And basic supplies. But for me, working minimum wage and trying to save for college. It felt like a fortune. It was my celebration. My small taste of freedom before starting community college in the fall. When I returned, there was a strange silence at home. Mom stood at the threshold of my room, holding an open jewelry box. Inside was only the velvet lining. The necklace was gone. Where is it? Linda's voice sounded as if I'd broken a family heirloom. When I was at a loss, still carrying my camping backpack. The necklace. Grandma's gold chain. You were the only one here this morning before leaving. Only you could have taken it. Father Robert stood behind her, arms crossed, face stony. He was always silent when things got bad. Like a security guard blocking an exit. I didn't touch it. I said, I didn't even know where you kept it. You're lying. A voice came from the stairway. Jessica was standing there, chewing gum and looking at me with practiced indifference. She was 20 then, working at a salon, still living at home. I saw you going through Mom's room yesterday morning. I thought you were looking for something to borrow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're lying, I whispered. Don't you dare call your sister a liar. Mom flouted, but I really didn't take it. I was packing for camping. I never went in your room. Then where's the money? My father intervened. I spent everything I had on the camping trip. You know I've been saving for months. Check my bank account if you want. They didn't care about logic. 2 days later, I came home from my grocery store shift and my room was destroyed. Things were scattered. Drawers were turned inside out. My backpack was emptied completely. We were looking for evidence. My mother explained coldly. You should be grateful we haven't called the police yet. My father added, but they did call them. The next week, I sat for 2 hours at the Columbus Police Department, explaining to Officer Martinez that I'd never held that necklace in my hands. He wrote everything down, asking routine questions about my relationship with my family. Whether I had money problems, he treated it professionally. But I could see the skepticism in his eyes. The case went nowhere. There was no evidence I'd taken anything. The necklace never appeared at local pawn shops, online marketplaces, or anywhere else they looked, but in my house, evidence wasn't needed to prove my guilt. The damage was done. Word spread through our extended family quickly. My cousins became distant. Aunt Carol removed me from the family group chat and didn't invite me to her 4th of July barbecue that summer. Some of my high school friends' parents asked them not to hang out with me anymore. My closest cousin, Sarah, who I'd been texting constantly throughout senior year, gradually stopped responding and eventually unfollowed me on Instagram. The social exile was swift and complete. And through it all, Jessica just lived her life normally. She got engaged to Mike that fall, posted happy photos on social media, if never apologized or even acknowledged what had happened. When I turned 19, my parents handed me an envelope with $50 and a note. We think it's time for you to become independent. Good luck. No birthday cake. No family dinner. Just eviction disguised as encouragement. I found a tiny room in a house shared with 3 other people near Ohio State campus. Worked full-time at Target. and enrolled part-time in community college. Some nights, I was so exhausted from working and studying that I'd fall asleep at the library. I held on because I had to. Not because I expected vindication. I stopped hoping they'd believe me or apologize. I just focused on building a life away from their judgment. For 2 years, I heard nothing from them. Jessica got married, had a baby, posted endless happy family photos. Life moved on for everyone except me. Until March 2022, when I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace late one night, looking for a used desk for my apartment. There, it was a familiar gold chain with a distinctive twisted pattern and a small dent near the clasp. The same scratch on one of the links that I remembered from seeing it in Mom's jewelry box years earlier. The listing read vintage gold necklace. Family piece. Need to sell quickly. $150. Oboe. The seller's profile showed a woman named Jennifer Walsh with only a few photos, clearly a fake account. But the necklace was unmistakably Grandma's. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots and saved the listing. This wasn't anger or a desire for revenge. It was clarity, the kind that comes when you finally see proof of what you always knew was true. I called my friend Maya, who had stuck by me through everything. I need your help with something important. I told her. She listened to the whole story and agreed to help without hesitation. I'll contact the seller as a buyer, Maya said. I'll ask lots of questions about where it came from, why she's selling it, if it's really Jessica using a fake name. Maybe she'll slip up. Maya created her own fake email account and contacted the seller, expressing interest and asking to meet at a neutral location. The response came quickly. Can meet tomorrow at Panera, on High Street. I'll bring the necklace. Cash only. Maya and I planned carefully. She would wear a small recording device I'd borrowed from a friend in my journalism class. I would sit at a nearby table, close enough to hear, but far enough away not to be recognized. The next day, Maya sat across from a woman wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, but I recognized the voice immediately. And when she turned her head, I caught a glimpse of Jessica's profile. Maya asked casual questions. It's beautiful. Where did you get it? It was my grandmother's. Jessica replied smoothly. I inherited it. But I need money for my baby's daycare. She was lying directly to a stranger's face, just as she had lied to our family. Maya continued, Do you have any documentation? My boyfriend wants to make sure it's authentic before I spend this much. No paperwork. Jessica said quickly, It's been in my family for generations. That's all I can tell you. I had heard enough. I had her on recording, claiming the necklace was hers. Inherited from her grandmother, the same grandmother we shared. The same necklace she had watched me be accused of stealing. Maya made an excuse about needing to check with her boyfriend and left. Jessica looked frustrated, but agreed to wait for a call back. Instead of calling Jessica back, I took the recording to the Columbus Police Department. Officer Martinez was still there, and he remembered the case. This is interesting, he said after listening to the audio. It's not enough for criminal charges after all this time, but it's certainly evidence that supports your original statement. He made copies of everything and added it to the original case file. If your family ever questions what happened again, you have this, he said. Sometimes that's the best resolution you can get. I thanked him and left, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: validation. I didn't contact my family immediately. I sat with the truth for a few days, deciding what to do with it. When my mother's text came inviting me for a visit, I knew it was time. I would go back, not to reconcile, but to close this chapter properly. Now, standing in that storage room with the dog's bed, watching Jessica's face drain of color as she stared at the screenshots on my phone, I felt calm. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, finally having its day. Jessica, I said quietly, I recorded you selling Grandma's necklace. The one you watched me get blamed for stealing. The one you told a stranger you inherited from your grandmother. The room went completely silent. Even the sounds from upstairs stopped. That's impossible. Jessica whispered. You're bluffing. I opened another photo on my phone, a clear image of her at the Panera. Of the necklace, visible on the table between her and Maya. March 15th. 2022. 2:30 p.m. High Street Panera. You sold it for $120 to someone you thought was a stranger. Mike stepped forward and gently took my phone. Looking at the photos, his face changed as he recognized his wife. Jess. Is this real? She grabbed for the phone, but he held it away from her. It's fake. She's trying to frame me. People can Photoshop anything now. What about this? I played a portion of the audio recording. Jessica's voice came through clearly. It was my grandmother's. I inherited it. Mike's face went white. My parents stood frozen, finally understanding what they were hearing. I have the full recording, I said, and copies at the police station. Officer Martinez remembers our case. Jessica sank onto the stairs, her hands over her face. The confident, mocking sister was gone, replaced by someone who looked very small and very caught. Why, Mike asked quietly, why would you do this to your own sister? Jessica looked up with tears in her eyes. I needed money. I had credit card debt. And I was scared to tell Mom and Dad. I thought she'd never be able to prove she didn't take it. But you watched them destroy her life. Mike said, his voice getting louder. You watched them kick her out. You never said anything. I was scared. Jessica sobbed. Once I let them believe it, I couldn't take it back. It got too big. My mother finally spoke, Emma. We owe you an apology. But I was looking at Jessica. I want to hear it from her. Jessica looked up at me, mascara running down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was young and stupid and scared. You were 20. I said, and you watched me get kicked out on my 19th birthday. You posted happy family photos while I was eating ramen and sleeping on a mattress on the floor. You let me be labeled a thief for 3 years. I paused. But thank you for finally telling the truth. Mike stood up. I need some air, he said. Jess, we need to talk. Privately. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Emma, I'm sorry this happened to you. And I'm sorry it took this long to come out. After they left, my parents stood awkwardly in the hallway. We made a terrible mistake. My father said, we should have investigated more carefully. We should have trusted you. Yes, you should have. I agreed. But you chose to believe the worst of me instead. What can we do to make this right? My mother asked. I looked around the storage room they'd expected me to pay to sleep in. Next to the dog's bed. Nothing. I said simply, this isn't about making it right. It's about the truth finally being known. I picked up my bag. I'm going to drive back to Columbus tonight. Thank you for confirming what I already knew about where I stand in this family. My mother started to protest. But I continued. A storage room. $5 a night. While Jessica lives upstairs for free? Even when you thought I was coming to reconcile, this is how you saw fit to treat me. Emma, please stay. My father said, let's talk about this properly. We did talk about it properly. I replied, 3 years ago. You called me a thief and kicked me out. Today you found out you were wrong. That doesn't undo 3 years of my life. I walked toward the front door. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. As I reached for the door handle, my mother called out, what about Jessica? What's going to happen to her? I turned back. That's between her and Mike. And her own conscience. I'm not interested in punishment. I just wanted the truth. I drove back to Columbus that night with the windows down, music playing, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd won some victory, but because I no longer had to carry the weight of their false accusations. The truth had set me free, even if it hadn't set them free from their guilt. 2 weeks later, I heard through Aunt Carol that Mike had moved out and was staying with his brother. Jessica was back living with my parents. My mother had called several family members to set the record straight about what really happened with the necklace. Some relatives reached out to apologize. Cousin Sarah sent a long message explaining how ashamed she felt for believing the worst of me. Aunt Carol invited me to Thanksgiving and said my parents wouldn't be coming. Everyone knows the truth now. She wrote, "And everyone knows they owe you more than an apology." But I declined the invitation. Not out of bitterness, but because I'd learned something important. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had built a life without them, earned my associate's degree, gotten promoted to assistant manager at Target, and was planning to transfer to Ohio State in the fall. The truth was out. But more importantly, I had survived their lies and built something real for myself. That was victory enough. 6 months later, I got a text from Jessica. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Mike and I are getting divorced." I told him everything about why I really took the necklace. "I wanted you to know I'm in therapy, and I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know I'm facing what I did." I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some truths come too late to matter, but I was glad she was getting help. Not for my sake, but for hers, and for anyone else who might trust her in the future. The truth had finally found its way to the surface. That had to be enough. A story 2. Before my birthday, my sister forbade me from attending her childless wedding. However, she insisted that I let her children attend my childless wedding. My cousin then informed me that she intended to steal the show during my wedding by announcing her pregnancy. Hi there. I'm 26 years old and getting married in a year. My sister and my dad have been criticizing me ever since I sent out the save the dates last week. I really need to inform you guys about what occurred in the past before I get to the major issue. My connection with my 3 one-year-old sister Kayla is now a little rocky. She can be really harsh and entitled, which is something I still struggle with. As a result, I've always desired a tight relationship with my sister. But she never understood. For the most part, she avoided me and treated me like an unwelcome insect, young and naive. I believed I could win my sister's affection. I wanted to get along well with her since she was like my hero. My sister was constantly doing something to get attention when she was little. That's how she was, and I embraced her for who she was. I may have been a bit naive to believe that we might be close. When she informed me that I was not invited to her wedding, I believe I finally woke up. I was not permitted to attend Kayla's wedding since she informed me that it would not be attended by children. But here's the deal. My 18th birthday was just a week away from her wedding. It was absurd. So I sobbed and pleaded with my sister to make an exception. As a youngster, she was tagging me. Her location wasn't kid-friendly or anything. She refused to provide alcohol at all. She didn't have any good cause to keep me out. She probably didn't want me to attend the wedding. Anyway, even though I begged her not to, she excluded me, and I was unable to alter her decision. My parents hadn't stepped in. I began separating from my sister after that day. Kayla didn't care or didn't notice. My inclination is towards the latter. She and I have a very strange connection, and I don't even know her husband well. We don't communicate one-on-one in any way. We just get together at family events. Although I like her 2 children, I must admit that I don't have a close relationship with them either. Kayla never tries to ask me to her place or spend time with me alone. When her children were born, I made an effort to grow closer, but she either disregarded or rejected me. I eventually quit trying and focused on the family members who really want my presence in their life. This background information will help you better grasp my predicament. I chose to go on a date with my fiancé after we were engaged. Early on, we made the decision that we did not want children at our wedding. In order for family and friends to be ready, we created the save, the dates, and mailed them to them. We also said that there were to be no children at all during the wedding. Kayla was invited as well, until something occurred that compelled me to write this piece. I was content to move on and focus on making preparations. A few days ago, my sister phoned and blasted me, saying that I must be lying to her. I obviously asked her to explain what was wrong since, at first, I didn't comprehend the commotion. After a while, I realized from her outbursts that Mom was upset that I was getting married without children. Guys, can you image that? The lady who married without children was upset that I was doing the same? When she stated that, I just couldn't believe what I heard. I kept asking her whether I was misinterpreting her, or if she was being serious. However, my sister furiously verified that my presumption was correct. She detested the fact that I was keeping children out of the wedding. I informed her that I had the last say over how to handle it, since it was my wedding. Additionally, I made it very obvious to her that I did not want children at the wedding. I was planning to keep my innocent nieces and nephews out of the wedding, which infuriated my sister, who labeled me an entitled and immature bridezilla. The majority of the children are under 5, so they won't really miss the wedding anyway, I assured her gently. In addition, I didn't want children to go about and inadvertently get into anything. Not to add that there will be a lot of drinking and an open bar. Every member of the family with children has babies and toddlers. And as we all know, young children cannot be disciplined or reprimanded to behave in a certain way. Children will behave like children. And I was only addressing the issue at its earliest stage, rather than attempting to handle any potential disaster. My sister blasted me for calling her kid challenging and uncontrollable. So, it seems it was the incorrect thing to say. I never said anything like that. I assured them. In response, Kayla said that because they won't create any trouble like the other children, they need to be welcomed to the wedding. I informed her that I wouldn't be making such an exception as everyone would want to bring their kids and accuse me of being biased. Admittedly, I have some very close friends and relatives who would be saddened and outraged if I let foolish Kayla bring her children while they were unable to. I told my sister everything, but she refused to listen. The lady shouted and screamed at me incessantly. After a while, I became very angry with her and told her that she had no right to be angry with me since she had a wedding without children. She hadn't even let me, her own sister, attend her wedding. I reminded her she had omitted her own sister, who was 1 week away from becoming 18. While I was eliminating actual children, that did not sit well with my sister. She began to rant at me once again, accusing me of being immature, batty, and vengeful by harboring baseless resentments. I was deliberately doing this to get even with her for what she did years ago, she said, calling me a mad lady. She hung up on me just as I was going to explain that this wasn't even about her. Dead quiet on my end, since I didn't bother to get in touch again. But my sister is calling me derogatory names and blowing up my phone. Additionally, and she has enlisted my parents and persuaded them to blow up my phone. According to my parents, I shouldn't be callous enough to keep my own nephews out of the wedding, and this childless wedding is definitely not a smart idea. They also keep repeating that it's only a simple request from my sister and that I shouldn't destroy our connection over it. I fail to see how this is a request. They're much alone, a minor one. My folks are also making me quite angry right now. My fiancé informed me that he also doesn't want to make any exceptions when we spoke. If anything, he is furious with my parents and sister for attempting to influence my decision. He is upset that I am being shamed for the same things since they are aware of what my sister did at her wedding. His side of the family is totally okay with his not having children at the wedding. My fiancé is totally on board. And he doesn't even want my obnoxious sister to attend the wedding. However, my sister and dad are arguing otherwise. They're also attempting to blackmail me. which isn't amusing at all. Even though we are not close, I still adore my nephews. And it makes me feel a little bad. I'm worried that I'll lose my mind due to the wedding planning and my demanding work schedule. Could you kindly advise me on my next course of action? I'm at my breaking point with their nonsense. If it weren't for my fiancé's family, I would have already considered elopement. I don't want them to miss their son's special day since they didn't do anything wrong. However, my family's foolishness is forcing me to reevaluate every choice I've ever made. Edit. I am unable to respond to every remark since I am receiving too many. In this update, I will thus fix a few issues. This is just for the queries that keep coming up. And I will add more details in a lengthier update. I was aware that some people would criticize me for getting married without children. I don't think my request is in any way flawed. I would have included my adolescent cousins or something if I had any pactel. However, the youngest member of the family is no older than 6 or 7 Eichsbrode. Additionally, please refrain from acting as if kids may cause chaos. Additionally, children find weddings to be lengthy and dull. That would not be fun for any of them. It would be impolite and hurt their feelings to send them home after the wedding. I don't want to include them in any aspect of the wedding because of this. You folks were also curious about my sister's response to my criticism of her hypocrisy. She did, however, have some flawed reasoning to back up her position. She said that it made sense for her to have a childless wedding since nobody truly had children at the time. However, I should be inviting my cousins to the party given that the majority of them have children. I now understand that I would have been the sole minor attending Kayla's wedding. At that time, none of our relatives had children, and none of her acquaintances had gotten married so young. She didn't make an exception for me even though I was the youngest in the family. I'm beginning to wonder why my parents gave her the freedom to do as she pleased and now object to my choice. My parents just informed me that it was Kayla's big day and that they had no say in the matter. Despite my pleading with them to persuade her to invite me, there have also been inquiries concerning the opinions of my other relatives and acquaintances about my wedding without children. Well, they didn't say a word. They all said yes when they RSVP'd. Everybody who lives close by would either hire babysitters or their family to watch their children. They have plenty of time to make plans since I am basically giving them a year's notice. Some of them, I believe, are secretly relieved to be able to spend some time away from the children without feeling bad about it. Instead of being a parent all day, I'm giving them an opportunity to relax and have a little fun. One update. I can't believe how many people have commented on my article. I got a lot of varied feedback, but the majority of the negative feedback came from folks who detest weddings without children. Why some of you believe your kid belongs everywhere is beyond me. Do you insist on bringing your children with you when you go to adult-only establishments? This reasoning simply doesn't make sense to me. Couples choose childless marriages in the first place because of entitled individuals like you. Kids make mistakes. For a period, since they are youngsters, it would be inappropriate to be angry with them. Therefore, just refusing to allow them in is the simple option. Additionally, that child will likely be quite bored throughout the ceremony and will hardly remember the wedding. What do bored children do at wedding ceremonies? Quit behaving as if kids should be everywhere. My sister is no better than any of you. Oh, and some of you actually attempted to do me a favor by telling me that I shouldn't be upset that my sister didn't invite me to her wedding using the same reasoning. I was almost 18, so I was well versed in wedding protocol. I started attending weddings when I was 14 years old. I was old enough to have complete control over myself. Therefore, I never once misbehaved or created trouble. I would have let them to return if the family had any adolescents. All of the children I left out are less than 6 or 7. Since I won't be talking about these hurtful remarks again, I just wanted to share my viewpoint. Everyone else who got in touch and offered wise counsel has been really beneficial. Regarding my sister's tendency to create controversy in order to get attention, you folks brought up some insightful points. You may not be all that wrong. My sister despises her role as a sibling. She dislikes sharing attention and has never desired a sibling. When she wasn't in favor of having another child, I believe my parents felt guilty. They attempt to support her and advise me to make concessions because of this. That's what I believe. Anyhow, I believe my sister purposefully chose a day around my 18th birthday because she wanted everyone to speak on her and not me. And she has thrown some serious tantrums on my special occasions in the past. In my family, celebrating an 18th birthday is a huge deal, and everyone goes all out on that day. Everyone was exhausted after the wedding, and my parents didn't have much money, so I didn't get to have one. I didn't really care since I was feeling a bit upset and let down at the moment. Up until her wedding, my sister had all the attention she needed. On my 20th birthday, she announced her first pregnancy, and soon after, I started my first real job. She announced her second. Thus, it is evident that there is a pattern in it. I honestly didn't think about it. But some of your remarks really got me to reflect. Perhaps my sister is attempting to cause difficulty in order to get at least part of my attention. Right now, I'm a little tired of her, but I'm at a loss for what to do. I might think about removing her invitation. Several of you said, unfortunately, it isn't an option. My parents will not accept this since they value family. Funny enough, my 7-year-old fiancé Nate has been arguing that my sister shouldn't attend since she has a major issue with our wedding. But I'm aware that's not possible. My parents are now advocating for a family gathering to resolve this matter so that we can just go on with our lives. Even though I'm not sure whether it will help, I may still go. In order to talk about everything with family and under one roof, they want my sister and I to be there with them. They are quite certain that if we do this, we will reach a decent compromise. I really doubt that, and I'm not sure what sort of concession they're looking for from me. I suppose I'll know when I know. I'm getting ready to stand my ground and not give in to pressure. I'm not too worried since I'm not a doormat. I'll provide an update to let you folks know how that conversation went. The second update, after returning from the family meeting, I'm still unsure about what to do. My parents had been optimistic that we would come to an agreement, but that didn't happen. My sister and I weren't going to make any concessions, as I had anticipated, because I had the audacity to invite her priceless children to the wedding. She just continued ranting and berating me. She just would not listen to my repeated attempts to clarify my position. While my sister was screaming like a banshee, I was behaving like a decent human being, which made my parents feel a bit sorry for me. My sister doesn't really listen to them. However, no amount of yelling or guilt-tripping would change my mind. I informed Kayla firmly. Then, since I was determined to be a spoilsport, she advised me to locate and pay for babysitters. I strongly rejected that, as I don't believe I'm accountable for it. Again, apart from Kayla, no one else was requesting assistance or payment. My sister has no trouble paying for nursery. I am aware that she sometimes hired them for her date nights, but she refused to pay for one because she didn't want to have her children at my wedding. She asked me to pay for her babysitters, so I informed her that I wouldn't. Nate would never approve of this, and our funds were already limited. Then Kayla said that the least I could do was cover the cost of the babysitter, since she would have to rush to locate one on such short notice. I chuckled and told her she had a whole year to organize things. Kayla refused to accept my parents' offer to cover the cost of her babysitters. She was being petty. Yes, she wanted me to pay for my failure to regard her sentiments while planning my wedding. In addition, my parents attempted to propose that Kayla's husband take care of the children at home while she went to the wedding. That proposal did not sit well with my sister. I was completely done with the chat after what seemed like an eternity. My sister's outbursts had left me psychologically spent, and I was already fatigued. I informed her that I would not be altering my wedding for her, and she was free to skip it if she was really upset about it. After that, my sister yelled at me, and my parents stood by her side. They advised me to have my sister attend the wedding and to refrain from saying such things. Again, The talk was going nowhere. So I departed a bit later. I was aware that the meeting was pointless and beneficial to me. I just told Nate what happened when I got home. He had become even more enraged. I haven't checked my phone yet, but my sister and parents are still bombarding it with pointless messages. I'm now really thinking about eloping and not even inviting my side of the family. I shall advise the wider family to speak with my parents if they inquire as to why no one was invited. Right now, elopement is definitely the wisest course of action, since I am truly at my wit's end. The third update. You have no clue how much your kind remarks have aided me. So let me say that before I make this update, I felt like my wedding was already wrecked and was simply tired of everything. Even if I haven't planned the wedding well, issues are already starting to arise. I lost all motivation and was no longer able to experience the thrill. My sister's stupidity was taking precedence over all of these wedding procedures. I was on the verge of telling Nate to notify his folks that we were going to elope. However, your remarks have really made me realize things. You are correct when you say that because my friends and my extended family haven't done anything wrong. I shouldn't penalize them. Additionally, you brought up the fact that my sister was already making the whole situation about herself, and most likely succeeded in drawing the majority of the focus to herself. It was as if my mind suddenly became clear. In reality, my sister was already wrecking my wedding, and I was allowing her to continue. I ought to have put an end to this bullshit much earlier. I have no idea why. After our relationship had deteriorated, I was so adamant on seeing her. Kayla has shown her inability to change. Giving her undue significance and wasting my words is all I'm doing. All of these thoughts crossed my mind. I then made the decision to sit down with my folks for a brief conversation. Nate accompanied me as well for support. I wanted to speak with my parents in privacy. So, we didn't have my sister present during the meeting. My parents have been severely criticized by you all for their part in this catastrophe. Even if I am angry with them, they are still my parents, and much superior than my awful sister. In the end, I thus wanted to speak with them briefly in an attempt to explain my position. During our lengthy conversation, I really let my emotions out on them. It was by no means a cool-headed conversation. Both my dad and I were in tears. It was quite sentimental. I didn't hold back this time. I told my parents about all the occasions Kayla had wrecked my special days and tried to divert their focus from me. I reminded them that Kayla had no right to demand me to invite her children to the wedding since they had already declined to persuade her to do so. I vented to them completely, even telling them that they were all making me want to quit and go away. I believe that my desire to run away because I was too tired of organizing my own wedding had a significant impact on my parents. Nate also spoke out and said that he was in favor of elopement, since the turmoil was already deterring him from wanting a lavish wedding. My father began frantically telling me not to do this, as my mother sobbed. They expressed sincere regret and somewhat acknowledged their own responsibility for my sister's years of purposeful harassment of me. Since Kayla has often chastised them for giving her a brother and forcing her to confide in me about everything, I was correct to assume that they tended to side with her. My sister's level of greed and envy is beyond ridiculous. Now, I'm just so over her. My parents and I had a lengthy conversation, and Nate shared his opinions as well, which was quite beneficial. He gave my parents an independent viewpoint that let them see how unjust they were treating me. In order to avoid missing my wedding, they pleaded with us not to elope. It's interesting to note that they also expressed a desire to fully enjoy my wedding, since they had used the majority of my previous milestones to either celebrate Kayla's accomplishments or soothe her down. As I said before, Kayla never failed to spoil my important occasions. My parents also seem to have had enough of her actions. Thank God. They have pledged to improve and have finally understood me. My sister is no longer important to me. Soon, I'll write a no-contact letter and remove her off my wedding invitation list. My parents now support the choice that Nate and I have already made. Even though Kayla is my sister, I won't act like a doormat just to please her. When I say that I'm done, I mean it. Version 4. Hello everyone. I had to return to provide a last update. Since you all anticipated some drama, several of you have been DMing me to ask what happened. Yes. When I told my sister what I had decided. There had been some turmoil, but now I'm in a more relaxed state. She suffered more this time than I did. Even though I sort of anticipated her to cause drama, I returned to provide an update, since you may be curious about how my sister ended up suffering. Warning: my sister is now experiencing marital issues. As agreed upon, I prepared and texted my sister to inform her that she had been formally uninvited and that I would no longer be corresponding with her going forward. I had reminded her of her unpleasant behavior and told her about all she had done to me. I informed her that I was tired of being a total doormat and that I no longer wanted her drama. My sister blew out again after I wrote her the email. The fact that she took offense when I uninvited her and made contact with her genuinely caught me off guard. Since she never wanted me in the first place, I assumed she would have been content. But since I wasn't responding to her messages, she felt insulted and complained to my parents. My parents backed me rather than hers. So she was in for a nasty surprise. She then proceeded to inform the other members of the family that I was a cruel and envious bridezilla and that I was excluding her for no reason. Initially, I received texts from individuals asking me to help them and to be lenient with her. However, Giselle, a 3-4-year-old cousin of mine, suddenly revealed something shocking in the group chat. Giselle claims that my sister was upset with me for not asking her to my wedding because she had something planned to divert attention from me. According to Giselle, Kayla had intended to either show up pregnant or make her pregnancy known during the wedding in an effort to persuade her husband to have a third child. My sister seems to be far more dysfunctional than I first believed. After I got engaged, she foolishly told Giselle about her intentions. Kayla had even told her, rather boldly, that she would take center stage at my own wedding and embarrass me as usual. I won't get into the specifics of her other remarks, but it just demonstrates how somewhat fixated Kayla is on our rivalry. Although I don't compete with her, she has always seen me as a competitor. She was furious to hear that I was cutting off all communication with her, which meant she may never have another opportunity to outshine me. After Giselle revealed the information, you can only imagine how disastrous things became for her. In summary, my parents have been furious with her, and everyone believes she is insane. Unexpectedly, Kayla attempted to defend her behavior rather than make any denials. Since her husband didn't appreciate Kayla's behavior, I believe it ultimately made matters worse. My parents tell me that Dad did not find it funny that Kayla was trying to overshadow my wedding by having a third kid. His family is already dissatisfied with her, since it seems that she has also shown some competitive behavior with his sister and cousin. He informed her that either she received assistance or they got a divorce, since this was the final straw for him. Kayla sobbed in front of our parents and accused me of destroying her marriage because she was envious. Yes, it seems that I am partly to blame for this. Yes. I hung up as soon as I recognized her voice. But she had attempted to contact me and rant at me from a different number. Fortunately, her husband became quite irate, and she ceased her pranks after a few days. Her spouse is now sleeping in a different room while they attend couples counseling. I'm very certain that the man is staying because of the children. His bond with his family members was also damaged by Kayla's pranks, which has caused him to be angry for some time. I'm hoping Kayla will finally work on herself and take things seriously this time. As for me, it seems that I will ultimately have a quiet, drama-free wedding. I really appreciate all of your advice, which did assist me in establishing some firm limits. However, because it's doubtful that things would worsen again, this will be the last update. You are aware that I will return with a new post if they do. Story 3. Daniel is my name. I am 34 years old, and I own a modest yet profitable home-based software company. I've always been more of an introvert, the type of man who would rather read a nice book and have a quiet meal than attend parties or large gatherings. Megan, my wife, is the exact opposite, loud and charismatic. the room's lifeblood. For the most part, that contrast was effective for us. However, Sandra, her mother, was the one person with whom we never agreed. I would use the word overbearing to characterize Sandra, the type of woman who is adamant that her viewpoint is not only correct, but also divinely inspired. She won't argue if you confront her. She smiles while gaslighting passive-aggressively. Additionally, she constantly found a way to get into locations when she wasn't welcomed, like as our house or our choices, or our $50 000 trip. As I just found out, it had taken me more than a year to organize that trip. The blue water of Bora Bora is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Bungalow above the lake. Everything has been resolved. I had been secretly saving money by working with travel agencies, including verifying each family member's dietary requirements. Megan, our 2 children. Yes, Sandra. Since Megan demanded that she attend, it has been years since she was last seen. According to her, I bit my tongue. All right. If it meant providing my family with a priceless memory, I could put up with her for 10 days. She would behave. I promised myself I was paying for everything. After all, 3 days before to the trip. Fast forward. I heard a phone conversation Megan had put on speaker as I was in the kitchen, organizing last-minute details. Her mother was rambling on about how much she was looking forward to seeing Tom once more. I felt sick to my stomach. Megan's former lover from college. Tom was her ex. Sandra continued to follow him on Facebook and called him such a catch for some reason. I tried to speak calmly as I entered the room gently. Why does she bring up Tom? After a moment of seeming shocked, Megan attempted to dismiss it. Oh. And she just meant that she had asked him to join her for supper when we returned. Not a huge deal. It was a falsehood. I knew right away. When Megan lies, her voice trembles a little. Hardly perceptible unless you've committed every word she says to memory over the course of 10 years. At the moment, I remained silent. My instinct urged me to verify the guest list with the travel agency, but I didn't press it. My hands were shaking as the agent verified the passenger list, and I can still remember it. According to her, Sandra Miller paid for Tom Thomas E. Colton's reservation on the same airline and bungalow cluster. But connected to your reservation, I had a tunneling vision, without notifying me. This woman invited my wife's ex-boyfriend to the family vacation I had paid for. And she somehow persuaded herself that was perfectly okay. I didn't immediately confront anyone. I needed time to plan and think. I didn't want to blow out and turn like the crazy spouse. I began to observe and listen because I needed leverage. And I was infuriated by what I discovered. Tom wasn't the only one Sandra invited. He was to stay in the bungalow next to ours. As she had arranged, it was a small surprise, she told Megan. For her side, Megan says she was incensed to learn that she even attempted to have it canceled. But it turns out Sandra had already paid a portion of it herself. However, Megan didn't tell me, so I wasn't persuaded. None of it was ever discussed by her. Not until I discovered it for myself. I continued to act calm. At the dinner table, I grinned, as if nothing had happened. I carried on packing. I was asked often if I was excited about Megan. Absolutely. With a smile, I would say, I'm eager to create memories. In the meanwhile, I started to covertly dissect everything behind the scenes. I first had my share of the deposit refunded after contacting the travel agent. I informed them that I was canceling my family's reservation due to an emergency. I didn't completely call off the trip. No, I did not alter the reservations. I just moved my money to another location. I then booked a separate room someplace entirely different for myself and the children. Somewhere quiet. No drama. No Sandra. I kept it a secret. Not the children. Not Megan. Not even my closest Paul. I wanted the quiet to be painful. Then it occurred the night before leaving. Our bags were arranged at the front entrance while we sat in the living room. Sandra arrived early. Naturally, with that smug expression she usually had when she felt she was getting her way. And she drank her tea and glanced about. Then, as if it were the most casual thing ever, she turned to face me. For nostalgia's sake, I felt it would be good to invite Tom. He had a significant role in Megan's life. I assumed the children would also like meeting him. I looked at her for quite a while. Megan avoided looking at me. My daughter froze in mid-step. And my son looked up from his tablet. I grinned. Yes. Absolutely. I spoke quietly. I love a good surprise. I allowed the quiet to linger. Sandra's smile wavered slightly. And I saw it happen. Although Megan appeared perplexed, I could see her guilt growing. I excused myself, entered the bedroom, and snapped a picture of the updated reservation information. Forward it to my email. After that, I shut down the app, went back outside, and sat next to my children. I kissed them both and tucked them in that evening. Good night. We're going on an adventure tomorrow, I whispered. Just the three of us. My daughter blinked. What about Mommy? I smiled and said. She's got a different kind of trip planned. Megan and Sandra stayed up late that night, laughing, sipping wine. At one point, I heard Sandra say, Tom is going to flip when he sees Megan in a bikini. I stopped listening after that. I didn't want to hear anymore. At exactly 5:15 a.m., I slipped out of bed, packed my bag, and gently woke the kids. I left a letter taped to the bathroom mirror addressed to Megan. No yelling. No accusations. Just the truth laid out plainly. And a reminder, when you let someone else invite ghosts into your marriage, don't be surprised when the living walk away. And as we boarded our early flight to the Maldives with the sun rising behind us, I took one last look at my phone and turned it off completely. They could deal with whatever upheaval was ahead without me. At first, the trip to the Maldives was peaceful. The children were still half sleeping, nestled into the center seats and window, wearing headphones and neck pillows. I tried to quiet the turmoil in my breast as I sat in the aisle seat and watched the clouds move beneath us. I had lost my anger, not in the yelling, flinging manner I had anticipated. It burned more slowly and steadily, managed, measured. I had no desire for vengeance. In the sense of a cartoon antagonist, I had no intention of destroying lives. I simply wanted to stop being treated like an idiot. Or worse, as if my own marriage didn't matter. I continued thinking about all the minor warning signs that I had ignored over the years, including Sandra's constant bringing up of Tom during family meals and Megan's refusal to reprimand her. How, even after being married to me for over 10 years, she still kept old pictures of them in her mother's hallway. Megan would shrug it off and claim that her mother was simply being strange. Don't be upset about it. And I didn't. Years passed as I gulped. Sandra's passive remarks, such as Tom always helped with the dishes, or Tom would have loved this vacation spot, made me uncomfortable. So I bit my tongue. She was simply mired in the past. I reminded myself that I was adored by Megan, that we were stable. I couldn't get rid of the thought that I had been blind. Though, as I stared at my sleeping children, with my entire existence back in flux, or even overly lenient, and I wasn't going to continue to bear the emotional and financial consequences, the children cheered as we arrived in Mali. My daughter's face brightened like Christmas morning as soon as we got into the private boat that the resort had provided for us. In my experience, the water had the purest blue color. I chose the Maldives not just for its beauty, but also for its remoteness and inaccessibility. The sort of location where what's going on outside seems like a rumor, When we arrived at the bungalow hours and there were no unwelcome visitors in the adjacent room, I had an odd feeling. It had been weeks since I felt relief. No tension. No drama. All I could hear were the waves and my children laughing as they sprinted around the rooms vying for beds. The texts began on the second day. I had switched on my phone for a quick Wi-Fi check-in with work. Curiosity won over. Even though I hadn't intended to read anything else, there were more than 50 missed messages in the family group chat. Megan sent the first one. What's going on? Daniel, the reservation was canceled. According to the hotel, this is Thomas. My mother is going crazy. The following few were a mixture of bewilderment and terror. I didn't bother to open the voicemail Sandra sent. Then Megan added another. Tell me you didn't really leave. Please. This is crazy. You are behaving like a kid. That one almost made me chuckle. After what they did, it was childish. Then came the section that gave me a little indigestion. Where are the children? You really took them and didn't inform me, Daniel. This is not acceptable. Gazing at the message, I let out a sigh. I wasn't proud of how abruptly I interrupted Megan. I knew this was more than simply the vacation. But I didn't want to be dishonest. Trust was at issue here. She had no money left in the bank at the moment. I responded with one sentence. They're secure? When I'm ready. I'll go into detail. I then switched the phone off once more. In Bora Bora again. I later learned from friends and relatives that the repercussions had been severe. Sandra hadn't only invited Tom. It turns out, she believed she had used my money to reserve his accommodation. I canceled everything that was in my name. The difference was not covered by her card. If they did not pay in full, the hotel would not let them check in. Tom arrived anticipating a nice reception, perhaps thinking this was some sort of group reunion, only to see a frantic Sandra and an enraged Megan fighting at the front desk. Their tickets were not refunded by the airline. There was a cancellation fee assessed by the property. Sandra was unaware of Tom's existence. After a furious argument in which Megan referred to him as having a walking midlife crisis, he made reservations for a trip home that same evening. Megan's Instagram story, with the description, "Dream trip ruined," was the icing on the cake. Thank you. Sandra and Mum. She fell silent. Not a single quote regarding Tom. No mysterious posts on Facebook. Radio silence. In the meantime, I did all I could think of during the days in the Maldives. Swimming with my children. Eating delicious seafood on the beach. Dozing off in hammocks. And watching cheesy movies in bed with them were all planned activities for that trip. It wasn't flawless. There is nothing. However, it was quiet. Sincere. Away from the cacophony. Megan eventually managed to get in touch with me via the hotel on the 6th day. During breakfast, I was given a note from the front desk. Megan wrote just 5 words in her distinctive calligraphy. Do not give up on us. Please. For a long time, I gazed at the note. I wasn't sure yet if I needed distance or if I wanted a divorce. However, I was unaware of this. I couldn't ignore the boundary Sandra crossed when she brought Tom along on that vacation. And Megan had allowed her to do it, by remaining silent. She may or may not have intended to. I turned to see my children using a local guide to build a sandcastle. They were giggling. I'm laughing so hard. And for once, as my own family story did not include me in the background, I was in the center of it all. Right there. At that point, I became aware that something had changed within me and at home. 4 days later, when we flew home, that shift was about to send shockwaves. I kept our early return a secret from everyone. We took a covert flight. At 3:40 a.m., a red eye touched down. I had made arrangements for a car to drive us directly home. It's a short-term rental. Not our home. Before the trip, I made a discreet reservation. It was a little but cozy 3-bedroom home on the outskirts of town, tucked away by a lake and surrounded by towering trees. Calm, private, secure. I had no intention of fleeing my marriage. At least not yet. But just because the trip was over didn't mean I was mindlessly returning to the same house with the same issues. Megan had gone too far. She may not have welcomed Tom in person, but she had given in, made it possible, strike it. Above all, she hadn't prevented it. If the roles had been reversed, I already knew how the conversation would have gone if I'd allowed my ex to go on a $50,000 vacation and kept it a secret. There would have been no peace. That morning, I sent her a message. Once we were comfortable with the rental, we've returned. The children are doing well. This weekend, I'll drop them off at the house. She answered almost immediately. You can't simply leave like this. We must speak. Please. It wasn't until the last minute that I realized Mum had invited him. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. I did visit the house that Friday. But not by themselves. I brought Eric. My brother. He practices law, a man of silence. Sharp but as serene as a glacier. When we first entered, he didn't say anything. But Sandra was silent because of him. Yes. Indeed. Sandra was there, sipping a cappuccino and looking through a home decor magazine as if nothing had occurred. Sitting in the living room as if she owned the space. Megan was standing close to the hearth, eyes droopy and exhausted, arms crossed. When I walked in, she reached for me. Could we please chat? Daniel, I'm signaling to go to the kitchen by myself. Sandra laughed at me from behind. I should be there if you're going to accuse my daughter of anything. I interrupted her without looking back. No, you don't. Then we entered the kitchen. It appeared as though Megan hadn't slept since Bora Bora. Her voice faltered. None of this was planned by me. It wasn't until the day before our departure that I even realized Tom was coming. My mother believed it would be pleasant. I said icily, for the sake of the past. She turned her head away. I was the first to know, and you said nothing to me instead. Megan, that's what counts most. You had a chance to defend us. For myself, you didn't. Either. She nibbled on her lip, glassy eyes. I did not want the trip to be ruined. Perhaps she would cancel. I thought, she claimed to have covered the cost. She used my itinerary to pay for a portion of my trip before forcing herself to host. You were aware that it was incorrect. You simply didn't want a battle between us. The quiet weighed heavily. Not upset. Just depressing. Weary. I have no idea how to resolve this. She muttered. Perhaps you don't. I said. I left the kitchen behind. Sandra glanced up, poised to make a sarcastic comment. Eric, however, got up at the same moment and silenced her by removing a folder from his back. I'll be spending the weekend with the children. Flatly, I replied. They will remain with me. Slowly. We're working things out. Megan remained silent. She only gave a nod. Her eyes were filled with tears. I eventually read the envelope. Eric left me later that evening after putting the kids to bed in the rental and sitting on the veranda to watch the moon move across the lake. Early drafts of a separation agreement, not a divorce, were contained therein. Just room, limits, organization, and above all, protection of my money. I wanted alternatives, but I hadn't decided yet. I desired lucidity. The days that followed were calm, no drama, no Sandra text, no unexpected visitors, just lazy mornings watching cartoons and eating pancakes. Talking with my children and taking long walks by the lake helped me remember what it was like to be a parent and not simply a financial account. Megan called me on Monday of the next week. I waited for it to ring 3 times before answering. When I told my mother that she was no longer welcome in our home, she responded. She spoke in a hushed, almost embarrassed tone. I didn't want to make things more difficult, but I should have done it years ago. I was afraid about the reaction. I remained silent. I told her that I wanted to make this right, but I knew I would have to show that I meant it. After that, I canceled her keys, modified the code. I'm severing her financial connection. She is enraged. I'm resentful now. However, I no longer give a damn. A lengthy pause ensued. I simply, Daniel, I want us back. Not as it was. Better than it was. As I reclined on the wooden chair, I saw the pine trees soft swaying in the wind. I was hesitant to answer at first, because I wasn't sure whether I was ready to forgive. Not quite yet. Perhaps never. However, I became aware of something else as the wind blew gently through the leaves. The stillness didn't seem empty for the first time in years. It had the feel of vastness. Genuinely honest space. The sort that might, just might, I develop into something different. Something more powerful, or something else entirely. I still had that option. I took a while to respond to Megan. Not on that call. For the remainder of that day. No. I sat besides it. Leave the words hanging there. The goal was not to discipline her. It was to ensure that I wasn't hastily forgiving someone out of loneliness, fear, or guilt. I had been dismissing things for years and apologizing for emotions I was taught were too delicate. Putting up with her mother's persistent interference, I told myself that the conflict wasn't worth it, that maintaining harmony was part of becoming the greater person. However, silence-based tranquility is only pressure. It blows up eventually. I went the entire length of the little dock behind the lake home one night after the kids had gone to sleep, sat on the edge, and let my feet hang over the water. I asked myself the true question as I gazed at my reflection in the undulating surface. Do I still have faith in her? Not affection. Love is simple. Known. The edges are soft, but have faith. Trust is a system. Everything above it becomes unstable as it cracks. Could I work with her to rebuild it? Or had the foundation deteriorated so much that it was irreparable? I gave her another call in the morning. We'll get together. Tomorrow? I answered. Only us. A public setting. Neutral territory. I picked a peaceful cafe on the outskirts of town, close to the location of our first actual date. When things were easier, prior to marriage, prior to children. Megan arrived on schedule before Sandra began to consider our relationship as a tryout for her ideal family makeover. She appeared exhausted and emotionally depleted. No big motions. No makeup. Only her. For the first time in weeks, we really looked at each other as she sat across from me. I am aware of what I did, she added quietly. Or rather, I didn't. I am aware that I did not defend you. I understand how painful that was. I didn't interrupt. I gave her a chance to speak. In our own lives, I allowed my mother to treat you like a second-class citizen, and I was too afraid of losing her favor to shield you from her. I gave up trying since I didn't think she would ever respect boundaries. However, it wasn't until lately that I realized I had made you feel unimportant by doing that. And I've never done anything worse than that. Even though her eyes were already wet, she chose not to cry or focus on herself. She simply let the stillness to envelop us. I've spoken to a therapist already, she added. 2 times a week. I've been going. I'm practicing self-control. How I let myself to be destroyed. How I inflict that harm on you. I am aware that it is not a panacea. This year, or today, I don't anticipate your forgiveness. But I'd like to make this right. I wish to regain your confidence. Even if it means waiting a long time for the rest of my life. I remained silent. I wanted to express it correctly. Not because I was at a loss for words. You didn't just allow your mother to treat me badly. In my own marriage, I remarked, you made me feel alienated. I needed a companion, and not someone who would wince if her mother spoke. She answered, I know. And to her credit, she didn't recoil at this point. And whether you intended to or not, you chose to keep quiet over me when she invited Tom. Megan, it was your time. That was the one. You had the option to stop, she said. I wish I had. I leaned back in my chair and took a breath each day. I will not return home. Not quite yet. I'm willing to continue meeting, talking, co-parenting, and seeing where this goes, even if it's not for a long. However, Megan, you can't cure it. Before you can assist in rebuilding our borders, you must first rebuild your own, slowly. She nodded. I get it. Without saying another word, we drained our coffee. It wasn't chilly. It wasn't sour. It was truthful. Perhaps for the first time in a long time. Things progressed slowly over the following 3 months. Consciously, Megan continued to attend treatment. Sandra sent guilt-tripping emails and made a dozen unsuccessful attempts to contact following everything I've done for you. No sense. She was blocked by Megan. The locks were changed. Even gave back a check. Sandra sent a simple message on the children's birthdays. Something fresh is being built. Please be mindful of our personal space. I had never seen her draw a firm line before. We continued to meet once a week. Occasionally, more. Sometimes it's just us. And other times it's the kids. We discussed everything. The little things. Not simply the vacation. Sandra. Or Tom. We would no longer discuss our desires, fears, and missing things. I was aloof at first. Be cautious. Emotionally, I had one foot out the door, but then odd things began to happen. The barrier I had erected to keep myself safe remained intact. It moved, turned into a window. We took another trip 6 months after the Bora Bora tragedy. Nor the Maldives. Nor Bora Bora. In the woods, a little hut, 2 hours away. Only the 4 of us. No social media. No phones. And no strangers. Nothing but quiet. Conversations by the fire. Board games. And home-cooked dinners. We had a great time laughing. Every night. My daughter dozed off on my chest. My kid, who had stopped using the moniker months ago, began referring to me as Captain Dad. Once more, Megan, too. She didn't beg for pardon. She demonstrated it by listening intently, not recoiling in the face of conflict, and not avoiding her mother's name, but refusing to allow it take over the conversation. I moved back in after we got back. As a choice, a decisión, rather than as a reward or a restart. The problem is this, because it shouldn't. Life didn't miraculously return to how it was. The previous iteration of ourselves was unsustainable. We didn't have to return. We had to change. Sandra made another attempt to get in touch. This time via a family friend who sent me a lengthy apology via email. I didn't respond. Neither did Megan. We did not open the door. It wasn't retaliation. Peace was that. Regarding Tom, I am unsure of his current location. I don't give a damn. The threat was never him. He was only the last straw. A representation of all the issues Megan and I hadn't discussed. Like a ghost called forth by a woman unable to let go of the past. He entered our marriage. However, we did. We gave it up. Gradually. Daily. And now when I wake up, my children burst into our room. Their hair disheveled and their smiles drowsy. The man who paid for a trip that ended in betrayal doesn't seem like me. I feel like a man who lost everything when he went through a fire and yet managed to make it home. To a better home. Not the same one.